100, the show where we celebrate the people in the college's centennial year.
Today we're talking with Mr. Tom Matthews, the new school counsellor. We're keen to know what he does and to also talk about mindfulness and wellbeing, two concepts we're hearing a lot about.
Okay, welcome to StAC's 100, Mr. Matthews.
Congratulations.
And first question, let's just roll into it. How important is the school counsellor?
I think it's really important, becoming more so, in a school where there's so much pressure on the students, on a school where, on any school actually, on students where there's so much pressure coming from social media, and that's ever changing, ever changes. It's always moving, and there's I don't think we appreciate how much pressure is sometimes on you to achieve really well. All the different assignments you've got to get in. How do you balance all your sport and all your extracurricular stuff? And within that, you have all the reaches of social media and different pressures around that, which also add to the pressure that's on students today that we didn't face, 20, 30, 40 years ago. So it's a completely new environment. So my role is to help kids and students flourish through that. So how do we get the students who are struggling and bring them back up? But also I think too, and if you're talking about well-being, how do we get kids and take them from where they are and help them flourish and even perform even better? Yeah. So part of you achieving well at school or achieving well in sports is also having a balanced and flourishing well-being. So I hope that the counsellor's role isn't just in the back room where people are falling apart, that we become more integrated into what you're learning in the classroom. So I appear in the sort of in your social studies class every now and then, or mindfulness or wellbeing will appear there, or appear in the sports team. So I hope that this role will become more integrated, because I think there's more pressure on you guys now.
Yeah. Now you can't give details of cases, but are the issues you deal with the same as a few years ago or different?
From a few years ago, yes. If I go back 9 years, if I go back 10 years before everyone had a cell phone in their pocket, things have changed since then. So that multimedia has put extra pressure. So if someone's getting teased, for example, and it's one thing to be teased in the playground, and then if that follows them home through Facebook and Snapchat and their cell phone, then that's a whole extra pressure on that person. So that's shifted. Look, and the other significant thing is the earthquakes. That the earthquakes, 6 years ago now, they've left a footprint on our well-being within people who were here, and we're feeling the effects of that too, like increased anxiety and increased depression, which is 100% natural. So what was happening 7 years ago in my job is different to what's happening now. And so more anxiety, more depression, and just the ever-increasing scope of the multimedia and how that's even eroding at times into our well-being and into our psyche.
Okay, this is more kind of getting out of even just talking about StAC. Do you obviously again can't disclose anything, but are there kind of similar issues that you see at StAC to other schools, or are some things particular to certain areas? Or?
Oh, look, absolutely. And I naively thought that maybe they'd be different at StAC, but not at all. People are people, and stress is stress, and pressure is pressure. And no matter where we're from or what our background is, it's all the same. So I feel, if someone's in pain, it looks the same as if they were here or any of the previous schools I was at. So maybe what happens, a slight flavour here would be there's quite a bit of pressure, and so it's how do we perform it really well within our sports and our culture, within our music, and within our academics, and students seem to put a bit of pressure on themselves. There's a bit more pressure from the school and society. So there's balancing that might be a bit more of an issue here, but maybe only slightly. And so how do we? Yeah, so just trying to understand that, and how do we work with that anxiety that comes from there.
Yeah. Now, some of these issues are pretty serious.
Yeah.
Are they getting worse or better?
Anxiety is increasing, and this is globally though. This is globally. So at the moment, cardiovascular disease is the #1 killer of humans. the WHO, which is the World Health Organization, says within about 15 years, it's going to be mental health. So mental health is going to be bigger than any other medical issue we have in the world. And that's also played out here at StAC and here in Christchurch and here in New Zealand. So for some reason, this is growing, and it's quite serious. I mean, that's the number one cause of harm globally to human beings is going to be anxiety, depression, mental health. So we've got to start acting on that, and all owning it, not just me, but staff, students, communities, families. How do we all start addressing this problem that's on the rise? So yeah, it is increasing.
Do you ever think, like, the counsellor, this is kind of linking back to the other question, but do you ever think, like, the idea of the school counsellor ever kind of gets made, like, redundant? Do you kind of worry about maybe, like...
Oh, it'd be great. I'd love to be made redundant. I mean, ideally, people will come to me now and more often than not, when they're stressed or when things are falling apart, when they're feeling anxious, when the exam pressure on, and we say, well, here's some techniques and let's talk through this, and we give them tools and we help them out. But what happens if we live in a world where that becomes part of our classroom curriculum, where we've been taught well-being and we're taught all these skills of resilience, these skills of resilience, where we know how to... So as we start to feel the pressure mount, we're like, oh no, now I'm going to have to do a bit of breathing, or now maybe I'm going to have to connect with more people, maybe I'm going to have to try and work on my positive emotion, and we start playing with our own models. So we start looking after ourselves. So in an ideal world, it'd be great if either I wasn't needed in that ambulance at the bottom of the cliff when people fall over, but more, how do we get everyone with these skills? So it's not just left for those hard times. So I'd love to be made redundant with my job, but I think my job will probably change, and I think it is. So we start looking more at well-being and not just mental ill health.
Yeah. Now, people are talking about two different things right now: mindfulness and well-being. Now,
yes.
What is mindfulness?
Okay, mindfulness. Lots of different definitions. Mindfulness for me is how do we control our brain? How do we control our thoughts? How do we manage our emotions? So mindfulness is a tool to build resilience. So if I look at mindfulness, the stereotypical you say mindfulness, you think of yoga pants, in a pose, omming, and that's a form of mindfulness. But so is also starting a class, just being still and being quiet and doing a dot to dot and focusing on that intently. Mindfulness is also what most rugby kickers, when they're kicking a goal, they go into that state where they've got to really intently focus, and that's mindfulness. So it's when I control my own attention, so I'm controlling my attention, and I'm being aware of my own thoughts. I'm aware of myself, and I'm controlling where my brain is. And it becomes, and if we can do that, so mindfulness, if we can do that, and it becomes quite powerful, because the more we do practice that, the better our brain gets at it. So when we get stressed, I'm feeling anxious, but I don't have to act on that anxiety or that stress. So if I'm feeling stressed, I'm feeling anxious, I don't act on it. It's a bit like watching a horror movie. You watch a horror movie, and you're mindful when you're watching a horror movie, because you get really stressed, you get really scared, but you don't run out of there like a baby. You tough it out, and you're like, okay, I'm not going to run. I'm just going to. And in some way, you're suppressing. You're choosing where you want to think. You're choosing not to overreact to this, and it's just a movie. It's just TV. And in effect, it's trying to do that in our whole life. I'm feeling angry, but I don't have to punch. So you're choosing your response to your emotions, and you're controlling your brain. And it becomes, I brought a brain along. Do you want to see my brain?
Alrighty then.
Yeah, sure.
Here's the brain. So I'll show you this, because I think it's fascinating, because a lot of mindfulness is about, it becomes sort of very mystical, but it's not mystical. Here's a brain, and here are your little eyeballs. They sit about here just to get the reference of. And there are three. There's lots of different parts of the brain, but there are a couple of main parts. This is your thinking brain here. Mm-hmm. And down here, I'll pull this out. We don't need the cerebellum right now, but we're going to pull this bit here out and put it back together. And this here is the top bit here is the emotional brain. And they can work quite independently. When you're really stressed, that brain gets all the blood, and that brain has all the power. So when you're really angry and you're really stressed and you get angry, you punch. Or when you're sad, you cry. Or when you and you sort of don't have much control over that, unless. And mindfulness is about bringing these two brains together into a conversation, and that's done through things like breathing, deep breathing. It's done through things like controlling your thoughts, listening, trying to really ground yourself in the present. But as you do that, and this is the fascinating part, I think, as you do that, there's a part of the brain just here that fires and it starts pinging, it pings and it pings and it pings, and the neurons start buzzing through there really fast. And the more you get those neurons about there buzzing, the better you are at things like controlling your anger, your fear, regulating your emotions, your intuition, your intelligence. So you're able to access both this intelligent part of your brain, which is because this is where all your knowledge is, this cortex and these frontal lobes up here, and the emotional part of the brain. And being mindful is about bringing them into a conversation with themselves and literally building up a part of your brain in here. And the bigger that is, the more you are able to control that stress, and more you are able to get really worried, but then you work through that. We choose our reactions rather than this part of the brain choosing for us, or that part of the brain choosing for us. Let's bring it all together and use our whole brain and all our intelligence and wisdom in that moment. If we can do that, so mindfulness, you do that, you learn better. You retain information better. There's a whole bunch of things that we just perform better. So mindfulness is about the brain and using it like a muscle. The more we use it, the bigger it gets, the better it is, and the more effective it becomes. So mindfulness and the brain.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
That's almost the end, but do you have any final words? Just to say to the students just on this topic?
On mindfulness, on wellbeing?
Yeah.
Look, I think I'd hope that over my time here at StAC and already, that there's such great stuff going on here, and that as the students, as a staff, as a community, we start to become more aware of the needs that are facing us, so it's the increased anxiety, that we also start paying closer attention to our well-being, and we're paying closer attention to how do we flourish as well. And as we do that, as we look at how do we flourish, how do we really, finding our passion, growing really strong relationships, developing a deep sense of meaning, developing positive emotions, really achieving, this sort of framework that we start building up, and we become more fluent in that language, then I'm going to become, my role as a counsellor is not going to become very useful, and my role as well-being becomes more useful. So I hope that's where we go.
Fantastic. Do you want to do the end?
Yeah, well, thank you, Mr. Matthews.
Pleasure.
Now, to end today's StAC 100, we have a piece from the Centenary Gala, the pipe band opening.
See you next time.